the Honorable Attorney General of Edo State, Professor Yinka Omorogbe, the Chairman of LAPO, Mr. Godwin Egiamusoy, the CEO of Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company, Mr. Kende Ogundimu, the CEO of Amena Academy and Managing Director of Edosa Limited, Edosa Egobamen. Let me start by explaining the immediate absence of the governor. The governor is desperate to join this webinar in spite of his punishing schedule. His punishing schedule. I think he's outside those states, and we're in the process of connecting in, and I'm sure he will join us at some point. As a result, we will, and we were determined to keep time, so we will amend the agenda slightly. I will give a short setting of what this webinar is about, and then we'll proceed with inviting the Chief Judge to make her remarks, and then we follow by the Attorney General, and we follow in that order. If the governor, and when he joins us, we will interrupt the program and then have him give his message, and I trust you don't mind. Now, what are we going to be discussing today? We're going to be talking about reviving debt capital in Edo State. As a matter of fact, it is reviving debt capital in Nigeria. Every state suffers from this. And the concept is simple. What is debt capital? It is simply having assets that don't have a documentary form for you to leverage capital. It could be any assets. It could be assets, real assets for mortgages. We have the CEO of the Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company here to tell us about that. It could be assets other than land. It could be receivables, just cash flows. It could be intellectual property. But the issue is if those properties are not well packaged or sufficiently packaged, they become bankable and they're dead assets because you can leverage on them to expand wealth. The most difficult problem that we face is in the mortgage sector. The infrastructure is extremely weak, and I'll explain it in this way. I think there's a case which came to the Supreme Court some time ago, Savannah Bank and Gilo, and the facts are quite simple. Savannah had taken a loan, he defaulted, its mortgage was purportedly given. Unfortunately, the governor had not given his consent to that mortgage. So there was an equitable mortgage, as it's called. In other words, a mortgage that had not been perfected. He proceeded to court when there was about a foreclosure, and the matter went all the way to the Supreme Court. And Supreme Court said the mortgage was ineffective, what we lawyers say null and void. In other words, the collateral had failed. Now, you imagine the consequence as far as the bank is concerned. The bank lost money because there was no other way to regain the money. Property had reverted back to the borrower. The banks froze. And as a result, the banks were very reluctant to give credits. So you had that problem amidst many other problems. And I think Mr. Okumi will be talking about that. We also have the problem in non-real assets. So if you wanted to take a loan, a sale and lease back on property other than land, let's say a car, a barbing machine, a vulcanizer's machine, whatever it was, the banks or the institutions will ordinarily in the past not take that as collateral for credit. Many reasons. First, you couldn't locate, if the borrower moved, you couldn't locate where the assets were because they'd moved because of the nature of these assets that were easily movable. But now we've introduced the collateral, the National Collateral Registry, and I say we because I was involved in that. And what it means is that you can store assets electronically and use it as a collateral. But I don't see that happening a lot in Edo, either because there is insufficient dissemination of information or because it is just not popular. Now, Mr. Godwin Egiamosoy will tell us how he's done it. He's done very well, giving micro credits, and his default rate is impressive. And then we have the resolution of disputes. When there's credit defaults, in terms of mortgages, it is slow. Some cases are in court for 3, 4, 5 years, and then all the way to the Supreme Court. When you have that, it incentivizes the creditors from giving credits because there's no way to resolve and close on property, even though there's a default. There's a principle of law that allows the creditor insists that the borrower pays his debt before he gets an injunction to stop the sale of his property. But the courts will normally not apply it. On many occasions, the courts are congested and there's a bit of inefficiency. We have the Attorney General here today, pardon, the Chief Judge, who will talk about small claims courts dealing with assets other than land, small assets, which are being used as collateral. And for the first time, I think EDO comes after 2 other states that have introduced small claims court is a big relief for those who give out little credits to find a way of resolving and recovering credits, which has where there's a default. Finally, of course, the Attorney General will tell us about the policies that are being introduced to ease the doing of business. We also have a young man, a dynamic young man who's with us, who will tell us the challenges that he faced. He's ran businesses in Edo, and he's connected with Dubai, where there's excellence. He will tell us how he's succeeded so far, or what challenges he's experienced. With that opening and setting, I'd now like to call on the Chief Judge of Edo State to give us our opening remarks in 10 minutes. Thank you, my Lord.
The governor is on. I just saw the governor.
Right. Thank you very much.
Wait, please. He's on. Yeah.
Excellent. Is the governor now?
Yeah, he's actually been waiting for quite some time in
right. Right. Let me just introduce my governor. Thank you very much, sir. I had just said that in spite of your punishing schedule, you might be able to join us, and that if you did, we'll interrupt it, of course, for you, because we're very grateful. And this shows the your capacity. It shows the fact, the priority of those who live in Edo states and those who live below a certain economic line are your interests. For you to take time off from a very punished schedule to join us. For those who do not know the governor, I'll just give you a brief background of who the governor is and what he's done. A very brief background.
Good afternoon, all.
I'm interested.
Right. Go ahead. Go ahead. Excellency, go ahead. Your Excellency, I do apologize.
Something's wrong with his internet.
Yes, there's some challenge, obviously.
Yeah.
Because
well, in that area, but he's back on.
Yes, I can see him.
Can you hear me?
We can just about hear you.
On and off, Your Excellency.
We are trying to get a stronger network. Can you hear me?
Yes.
For putting this webinar together, and that the topic is something that's very dear to my heart. I'm a great fan of Hernando de Soto, the guy who wrote The Mystery of Capital, wrote the Mystery of Capital. And the thesis there was that for third world countries to develop, they will need to unleash their capital, which today is all resident in their land. And so for us in Edo State, I think that's what we need to do. We need to ensure that we document our land. We need to ensure that we title them. We need to ensure that we work with the federal authorities to create a collateral register so that we can transfer a title very easily and that becomes the basis for capital for for the very poor who is their little piece of land. For us in Edo State, we're going to be working very, very hard and assiduously to ensure that the GIS office does cover every inch of land in the state, and that we have a very fast-track process for issuing titles. At some point in time, we'll need to sit down with the experts to now deal with the issue of, of land that has litigation on them. So I want to thank you very much for this initiative and say to you that I'm looking forward to the outcomes of the decisions that will come from your conversations, and be rest assured that it's my priority, and by the grace of God, when I get sworn in my second term, I'll make Edo the model for
Thank you.
Titling of land.
Right. The governor obviously was able to give us the meat of what is relevant. And I think I wasn't going to say anything about the GIS. I was going to leave it to the Attorney General. Title to land is a big issue. There are so many issues on the question of insurance and all the derivatives that will derive from there. But I think the one thing that we got from the governor, the will and the commitment to do what is necessary to ease doing business, but more importantly, to enable property and enable such property in such a way that we can leverage on capital and expand wealth. I think this discussion, the philosophy running around how you expand wealth is only familiar with quite a few number of people, and the governor, fortunately, is one of them. I'm very impressed, and I'm happy with the fact that he could share his position with us, and it's commitment, and we're going to hold him accountable to it. We pray that he succeeds in his bid to come back to continue on this exercise. With that opening, I may now invite the Chief Judge of those states, my Lord, to kindly make her presentation. Thank you, your ladyship.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, once again. My topic today is the Small Claims Court as a panacea to resolving credit and microcredit related disputes. Yeah, I'm going to start with this presentation by defining some key concepts in this topic, and they are the Small Claims Court, which is a special court that provides expeditious, informal, and inexpensive adjudication of small claims. And then we have the panacea, which is a solution or a remedy for difficult situations as defined by the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. And then the issue of credits, which is the ability of a customer to obtain goods or services before payment based on the trust that payment will be made in future. This is also the definition from Oxford Dictionary and Lexicon. Then we have the microcredit, which is a method of lending very small sums of money to individuals to start or expand a small business. The microcredit borrowers, they tend to be low-income individuals, as from less developed countries, for example, like us in Nigeria. Let me use the word developing countries. The concept of microcredit is built on the idea that skilled people in developing countries who live outside the traditional banking and monetary systems can gain entry into an economy through the assistance of a small loan. Now, facilitating disputes through small claim court in credit and microcredit related disputes. The maintenance of law and order through effective, reliable, speedy resolution of financial disputes is a very fundamental issue to the success of every financial market and economy. The legal system does not exclude the resolution of disputes arising from informal transactions through legal or judicial means, alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. Microfinance arrangements are more often than not resolved through other informal means. In most developing countries, disputing parties are often reluctant to resort to law and often use some other means because the inefficiencies and delays associated with legal system has been some of the reasons attributed to non-use of legal means to resolve such disputes. But generally, I would say that the process of settling disputes involves some form of litigation through law processes and alternative dispute mechanisms such as negotiation, mediation, adjudication, arbitration, conciliation, and facilitation. But due to the informal and developing nature of microfinance as a phenomenon, as well as the delicate nature of issues arising from microtransactions, the specialized court or small claims court was established to deal with matters arising from microfinance transactions, credit and microcredit related disputes. In Edo State, the small claims court is relatively new, having been established on the 2nd day of March 2020. It was through the initiative of the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, PBEC, in Abuja, and in collaboration with Mr. Governor of Edo State and the judiciary headed by me, the Small Claims Court was established in Edo State. The Ministry of Justice, I must say, also had a role to play in this, headed by the Honorable Attorney General. The introduction of the Small Claims Court in Edo State has revolutionized the prosecution of small claims debt. Both credit and microcredit related disputes can result in the Small Claims Court as long as it does not exceed the sum of 5 million naira. That is where we have pegged it. And the main objective of this Small Claims Court is the procedure, which provides easy access to an informal, inexpensive, and speedy resolution of simple debt recovery disputes in the magistrate courts. The claim is usually for liquidated money demand. It is not in doubt that most small business owners who appear in small claims courts as claimants do so because they have difficulty securing payment of some product or service that they have provided to the defendant. And this brings me to an issue where during our sensitization programs in those states, when we established the Small Claims Court, we in Edo South, Edo Central, and Edo North, we had a lot of people who were operating small-scale businesses. And they had this issue because it was very well attended, and they had a lot of questions to ask. We have the local money lenders, they lend out money, and each time there's a default and they want their money back, the lawyer comes in and starts talking about a lot of legal jargons and all that. And in most times, these loans are not documented. So we had to advise them to start documenting these loans and sensitize them that they could approach the court on their own without a lawyer. As long as the debt is liquidated, the court, the procedure in the court is that within 60 days, the issue is decided, and the judgment letter has 14 days within which to pay, so that we have set out a procedure where the trials there don't go beyond 60 days. That's 2 months. So it's fast, it's inexpensive. The court fees are not expensive, and a litigant can come in by himself and file his papers without a lawyer, because they see the lawyers as people, although they are doing their work, no doubt, who delay proceedings and eventually make a whole, I don't want to use the word nonsense, just make the legal system ineffective, and so they get discouraged. So the most disputes involving money can be filed in small claims court, like I said. For example, the repayment of a loan, failure to meet the terms of a service contract. People with simple, low naira value cases can present their cases for adjudication before a magistrate in a small claims court. The debtor in a small claims court is obliged to comply with the judgment, like I said earlier, of the court, pay the judgment sum within 14 days of the delivery of judgment. And when there is a default in compliance, the relevant judgment will be enforced in like manner as the judgments of the magistrate court. In Edo State, we have 14 courts which have been designated as small claims courts. And in all the magisterial districts, the magistrates in these small courts, they have been trained. All supporting staff, registrars, court clerks, and bailiffs have also been trained. There's a committee to monitor the performance of the small claims courts, which has also been established. This is headed by a judge of the High Court. Every month, the small claims courts are required to file returns to the judge, who will, from there, forward it to PIPEC in Abuja, so they can also have an overview of what we are doing. But unfortunately, the global-19 pandemic has slowed down the workings of the small claims courts in Edo State. And this is not peculiar to us alone. It has affected every strata of the society, not only in Nigeria, but the world over. Presently, the small claims court in Edo State is functional. It's positioned to deal with all disputes relating to credit and microcredit, not exceeding 5 million, like I said. It's easy, inexpensive, and it's speedy. As the Honorable Chief Judge of Edo State, I have issued practice directions. We have the directions of small claims court here. We also have the handbook on practice and procedure in very simple English, can be understood by anyone who is literate, and these have been published in circulation. We have more copies, but we intend to circulate more. So we have both individuals, partnerships, associations, and corporations. They can approach the small claims court to resolve their credit and microcredit disputes in a cheap, easy manner. And matters in small claims courts, like I said earlier, also are to be concluded within 60 days from the date of filing to judgment. I believe the small claims courts, in concluding, is a solution or remedy to the obstacles and roadblocks that have long afflicted commercial industries or activities in Edo State and in Nigeria, especially in relation to credit and microcredit related disputes, with a reduction in time and cost, improved transparency and efficiency. The small claims court promotes the friendly business environment in Edo State and also encourages the micro, small, and medium enterprises to move from the informal sector to the formal sector, thereby growing the economy of Edo State in particular and Nigeria as a whole. And that is why I will end my small presentation, or my presentation, and I thank you all for listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my lord. Thank you for giving us a synopsis of the position of the small claims court, the position of Edo State. Very interesting. Two things, my lord, stands out. Firstly, or I'll say three. Firstly, Edo is the third, I think. There are just two states
Yes,
that
it's
have.
the third. Yes, yes. I
Correct.
forgot to mention that. We are the third.
Correct, and that's credit, and that's formidable,
Yes.
because the points that were won in the hierarchy of the ease of doing business around the world. One of the credits, one of the criteria by which credit is given, is the ability to adopt a small claims court for resolution of micro and small credit in connection with disputes of that nature. Now, the two things, my lord, I am not surprised that your lordship led this. I will come back to your lordship. Your lordship will be patient with us. I say I'm not surprised because I didn't reel out your CV. There are 2 points there that fascinates me. One is the fact that you started your career at Akinrele & Co., a renowned commercial law firm. And the other, which is very interesting, is that you're a member of the Chartered Institute of Mediators and Conciliators, and you're also a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. That gives me a lot of comfort, because we're moving towards alternative dispute resolution. It's not very often you see a CJ who sits over complex technical disputes moving towards the alternative dispute resolution. But I think that's the way to go. I'm very grateful, my lord, for that little synopsis. Let me now call on my senior colleague and good friend, the Attorney General. But before I do, I think only credit will be given to whom credit is due. I'd like to just mention 1 or 2 things from her CV to just demonstrate how eminently qualified the Attorney General is to be speaking on this subject. Of course, she was called to the bar in Nigeria, having obtained her LLB in the University of Ibadan. She then went on to obtain an LLM in one of the prestigious colleges in University of London, London School of Economics. She has exhibited sterling qualities in academia, leading up to her being the Dean of the School of Law in the University of Benin, and I think Ibadan. She since then has demonstrated immense capacity in the oil and gas sector. As a matter of fact, she was one of those appointed to sit in the OGIC, that's the Gas Sector Reform Implementation Committee. When it was reconstituted, she headed the subcommittee that drafted the bill that continued to cause a lot of controversy, only because we don't want to do the right thing. Attorney General also sits over the trafficking of the task force set up to stop trafficking in Edo State. And of course, she's the Attorney General trying to introduce a number of reforms. She is a reformist. Attorney General, please proceed to give your speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, learned senior advocate. Just one slight correction. I'm Ife, Great Ife, and not Ibadan. But proudly Dean of Ibadan, Faculty of Law. Thank you very much. The Honorable Justice Esther Edige, the Chief Judge of Edo State, other very, very distinguished persons here, distinguished panelists, and very distinguished attendees at this webinar. I'm very happy to speak here because I think what we're doing is really historic, definitely historic for my state, but also I will say that even worldwide, we will stand out to an extent because we're called today, and that is how to lift out the billions of people that are presently poor in the world. There are billions of people, over 2 billion, that are really desperately poor. And we have a few 100,000 at least in Edo State. Lifting people out of poverty is the Sustainable Development Goal 1, the primary one there. And like I've said, it's a major problem of the 20th century. It's a realization of the fact that development is people-centered at the end of the day. In our part of the world, when people are talking about development and achievements, very often they're talking about roads being built, hospitals. We do need roads, hospitals, we need buildings and things, but we need to improve the capacity of the people to a very great extent. So that's what makes education, for example, extremely important. That's what makes the healthcare services, as opposed to the buildings and the hospitals. It's the people that we're talking about. So we're talking about people-centered development, which at the end of the day is what sustainable development is all about. So we have all these many poor people. And the real question is, how do you lift them out of poverty? As Lapo's name is called, it's a huge problem. The poor have assets. That's a recognized fact. How do they have access to these assets? How can they utilize these assets in such a way that these assets can really count for them? That is something we're really concerned about in this state. As a person, I have been concerned about this for decades. It has always been something with me, that why are some poor and why are some rich? And there's so much you can go into there. And so again, like His Excellency has said, I was really fascinated by Hernando de Soto's Mystery of Capital when I read it decades ago. But the idea of translating it into practical reality was something that for me really came up when I had a lot of discussions with Osaro Egobame, and we're able to actually sit down and practicalize and talk about some of the things that we need to do. And again, in discussions with the NMRC, and they're going to talk, so I'm not going to talk much about that, it became obvious that for us in Benin, there were definite things that we had to do. In Edo State, we are abundantly blessed. We are creative people, very creative. We're industrious people. We're very imaginative. In fact, that's one reason that we travel so much. You know, we try and cross because we're trying to do things, not because we're not lazy people. We also have a lot of real property here because it has been imbibed in us, men and women, that we have to have property. We have to have property. So you find that even the person who you think has nothing is striving to sit down, to at least build one room or two rooms on whatever little plot of land that he or she can have. And so this is what about things that people can actually go around and get some of this property. Now, when you're talking about property, you're talking about tangible property, and then it's intangible. We're talking about real property, intellectual property. In this case, we're talking about tangible property, property you can hold, real property to a great extent. But I think Mr. Obama is going to talk a bit about the collateral registry as well, and you'll see that the other types of tangible property that actually come in. But it's all about being able to utilize those resources that we have been abundantly blessed with. We're happy to have a governor that thinks this way. It is quite a big thing for a governor to interrupt his campaign. He was right in the middle of a campaign to come and talk. And the truth is that he has done that because he has seen that this is very important. If you're trying to look for a key to unlock wealth or to unlock prosperity for Edo State, you're looking at the key now. We're talking about this key that unlocks debt capital, allows people who have one room in a family house to be able to utilize it to get capital, allows people with Igiogbe not to have to sell it and therefore permanently, permanently basically kill that golden egg, which might just be the only one that they have. So he has this vision, and it's a vision of a vibrant state, a vibrant Edo State full of prosperous citizens who can earn a good living and who can also be solid entrepreneurs that can also help other people to be entrepreneurs themselves and also to earn good living. And again, we're happy to have Mr. Edosa Egobame here, who has come in, chosen to make this place his root, and is ready to make entrepreneurs and to also obviously provide good living wages for those working with him. And then of course we have Lapo there, who has done so much. So we're really happy to have everybody as a partner here. And of course, NMRC we're overjoyed to be your partner. I'll wait for you to blow our trumpet. So I won't start blowing Edo's trumpet now. I'll let you do it. It's better. So what are we doing in Edo? We're trying to make land registration easier, and I believe we're succeeding. We have a very, very successful Edo GIS department, agency, sorry, that is doing very, very good work, and everybody is encouraged. In fact, once you know more about all this and there's greater awareness, everyone will want to register their title, because it's through registration that your title can go from invisibility to visibility. So it's helping to make capital easier for those that have less financial resources. So this is what we're talking about. I mean, to a great extent, we're talking about resurrection, that which is dead, making alive through definite legal processes. This is something that the law is definitely about. We need to realize when you're talking about the law and you're talking about justice, that you're talking about many, many facets. And that is why the Ministry of Justice has been able to tie in to the vision of Edo State under Mr. Godwin Obaseki, so as to work towards a state where truly, truly we will be prosperous, not just some people, but everybody at least, ideally, will be able to earn a living wage. So I'm very happy to be part of this webinar, and I have to thank you all for being a part of this journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Attorney General. It's not very often that you find the Attorney General and the Governor having a philosophical understanding of the conflict between economics and law. And this is what we're doing today, and we're very happy. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to introduce the Governor, but I was going to say three things in particular that impresses me about the Governor and the Attorney General of states. The three areas that they have focused on does not win political mileage, but that's what transforms a state. The first one is Edo Best, where there's a concentration on education. That gives me a lot of I am impressed by that. And if you see what they're doing, I was doing small research during the course of this, and they are training close to 1,500 teachers to in 300,000 pupils in 15,000 primary and secondary state schools. That is impressive, but it doesn't win a political mileage. The other point is, of course, the GIS, where you have satellite capturing all your land. Of course, the GIS is a start. Without it, there are many things we cannot be discussing here today. We're moving on to the next step of trying to ensure that defective title is title. And during the course of the conversation, I will ask questions or discuss areas on how we can do that very quickly so that those assets are bankable products. The third thing that impresses me about Edo States is the focus on the rule of law. There is a correlation between the rule of law and economic progress. There is a correlation between the rule of law and societal development. This is something a lot of states misses. Fortunately for us, we have an Attorney General and a Governor who understand this relation. So there are many things that I'd like to discuss during the course of the discussion, but I just throw something ahead before I call on Mr. Egiamosoy, which is this. If you go around those states, you will find a lot of property written not for sale, and this because there's a lot of disputes on inheritance. Most people don't have a C of O. They probably have cut out rooms or cut out room and parlor in a C of O. Now, the governor is beginning to issue electronic certificates. But one of the things that we've done in one other states, and we introduced some sort of dynamism. This property is not for sale. You have two brothers fighting over property. They have children who cannot go to school. The property is bogged down in litigation for almost 10 years. And what we always say is, if the two brothers are interested in selling, we could sell. However, because the property is subject to litigation, you have a problem. Now, not that they're not interested in selling, but each one says the money must go into my bank. That's really what the issue is. It's not so much that they're not interested. So the place is not developed. The two brothers are out of pocket. and the children can't go to school. So on one occasion, we said, why don't we put the money in the bank? And if any of you wins this litigation, you go to the bank and take that money. In the meantime, the interest on that funds was being used to train both families. In other words, the children from both families. That matter is still in court over 12 years. The children have been trained. The place was developed. None of them have been able to access the capital, but they are closer in friendship. So we must begin to introduce some dynamism of how we deal with this issue of debt capital. Just another reflection. Let me now call on Mr. Egiamusoy. But before I do so, I need to tell you one or two things about him. He obviously obtained his degree from the University of Benin Sociology. Then he did a PhD at Ekpoma. What stands out is the fact that all his businesses is geared towards uplifting the poor. And it is not surprising that the acronym LAPO stands for Lift Above Poverty Organization, and is done extremely well. I keep asking myself, I wish the trader money was passed through LAPO to expand, because your default rate is so impressive compared to the trader money, because that's because people are not interested in paying back government funds. But perhaps you tell us how you succeeded in reducing your default non-performing assets. Thank you very much, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for your kind words. The Chief Judge of Edo State, and allowed me to stand on, as they say, on the protocol that has been firmly established. I'm really very delighted to be a part of the initiative. With my very brief discussion with Osaro, it was very easy for me to make a quick decision, that is to be a part of this initiative. I want to begin by saying that people remain poor because they are denied of access to affordable capital. If you like, here we call it credit, to add to their basic skills. You still hear me? You still hear?
Yes, we hear you.
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Before.
Mr. Agemo, we can hear you, but I think you froze after you asked the question.
You froze.
All right. Let me, whilst we wait for Mr. Agiamusoy to get back to us, I will just introduce some other challenges or some other innovations dealing with some of the problems that we have. Right.
Back now? Yes, I'm back. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Very sorry for that. Yes. Okay. As I was saying, poor people, they remain poor because they are denied of access to affordable capital. In this case, we say credit, to add to their basic skills and their physical strength. Number two is the fact that they are denied of credits, not because of any other thing, because of the fact that they do not have command over assets that are acceptable. When I say acceptable to formal lenders. And following that up is the fact that if you exclude people from credit, it will definitely, first of all, for the individuals, exclude them from prosperity. And for the community, it will stunt economic growth. And finally, therefore, if we want to really ensure that we have economic growth that benefits all, we should be on the path of liberalizing access to affordable finance or affordable credit, and doing so through the process we are on today, that we therefore also enable these poor people to have command over their assets. The fact is that the strongest barrier to credit for the people, especially the poor people, over time has been lack of collateral. So if you ask them where is it, they don't have collateral. And it is this reason that about 40 years ago, it is for this reason that 40 years ago that prompted the rise of what we call microfinance. I was really very, very intrigued by the definition of the Chief Judge of Microfinance. So 40 years ago, microfinance arose simply to address the issue of barrier to credit for low-income people, and which was around the whole issue of tangible collateral. So microfinance, therefore, assessed the fact that affordable credit, as established, is vital to economic empowerment of the people. Very, very vital. The second is the fact that the mass of the people do not have control over assets. And therefore, microfinance mainstream practice recognizes the fact that security and comfort for lenders can be established not by the demand for tangible collateral, but by what we call social collateral, which essentially are using group methodology. The group methodology, in a way, enable the cooperative individual to support each other, at times to put some pressure when it comes to the whole issue of credit discipline. And that has worked well across the world for 40 years. And so the mainstream, if you look at the small businesses and assets to institutional credit, when I mean institutional credit now, from the formal or mainstream financial institution, for them, it is clear that collateral takes precedence over everything, even over what we regard as the primary protection of the viability of the business that is funded. When they look at the assessment of a business, is viable, is possible to make repayment as at when due, but they still put a lot of premium on provision of collateral. And see what this has done to Nigeria. We do know that the SME in Nigeria today account for over 96% of all the businesses in Nigeria. It is not just about statistics. Look around where we are. We have small micro businesses almost everywhere. But the reality, and the sad reality, is the fact that only 5% of loans delivered by commercial banks goes to this large number of small businesses. That is the challenge we have. And therefore today, the estimated gap or funding gap for micro and small enterprises is over 7 trillion naira. So that sector of the economy that takes a lot of Nigerians is excluded from the financial sector. The conventional lenders will tell you the issues with small businesses are poor corporate governance, weak systems, poor management. But the real thing is this, is that the little owners of SME actually have some assets, this little asset. The problem is that those assets are pure debt assets. So, which cannot be applied to leverage resources for their investment. So it is useless. They can't use it to raise any fund, to ensure that they ensure that their businesses move on and they benefit thereof. So therefore, what is being done? I think I will look at this from the perspective first from microfinance. I have said before that microfinance came up because there was the need to provide loans to people without the conventional collateral. And the good news is also that we have the National Collateral Registry. Much has been said about that, which is enabling. So what is this? Without going to the details of the nature, the operations, and the requirements, which I may touch towards the end of my talk, is to say that the registry or the act itself is to enable small borrowers, owners of micro, small, and medium enterprises without the required asset, in this case, mostly movable asset with titles, to offer their movable assets, for collateral to lending institutions. It is quite simple. The fact that why you don't have access to credit is the fact that you don't have immovable assets with titles. Now we want to create a different path you can. And that path is that you have some other movable assets you have. These can also be used to leverage facilities for your businesses. And so to be able to do that, the emergence of the National Collateral Registry. And I want to end my talk with looking at what more is needed to be done. We need to do more. The good thing that I've heard from the governor, from the attorney general, and from the chief judge is quite inspiring for me. It's comforting as a lender. And so much needs to be done, despite the fact of the achievement of microfinance globally, and even in Nigeria, and we take it down to Edo State. The reality is that there is still a desire for financial inclusion of everybody. Financial inclusion to me is finance for all who are willing and able to use credit. That should be the goal. Yes, microfinance have done much. For us in LAPO, for the past 3 years, we have done an average of 140 billion naira every month, to our clients. But there is still much to be done. There is also, we have the National Collateral Registry, fantastic initiative. But the reality is that, as has been noted, is what are we doing in Edo State? How are we feeling the impact? So there is need for awareness creation, sensitization of both the lending institutions, inclusive of microfinance bank and institutions, and also potential customers of those institutions. The financial institution need to understand the operations of the registry. For instance, they need to ensure that they get registered in the first place, and utilize the platform. Financial institutions in Edo State need to train their staff on how to manage asset-based lending. Financial institutions need to also create structure within their institution that can enable a large number of people with movable assets to benefit from this initiative. Lastly, I think that has been addressed by from the legal perspective. I think there's still more to be done in terms of other means to be applied, legal means inclusive. I'm also really very excited about the very innovative small clay court. And I think that there should be more awareness on this very beautiful initiative for more people to benefit. We need, as institution, that is financial institution, and also stakeholders in this state, to ensure that we liberalize access to credit through effort to brief life into the debt assets of our people. And it is for that reason I commend this initiative, and I fully support it. I want to be a part of it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, sir. You obviously won me over, because you're not just talking, you're actually walking the talk. The statistics are something we work with. And I think your microfinance bank obviously stands as one that will be considered a success factor if we use the metrics about non-performing loans. I know that during the course of the discussion, we'll have reason to discuss that in a bit more detail. But one or two things that you said, and I'd like you to keep that, and we'll come back during the course of it. And that is the realization that 96% of the economy is sustained by small and micro businesses. Very interesting, because the oil and gas sector, which is, people have to understand that what it contributes to GDP is little or none in terms of 3%. And that's the way the system works. The oil and gas sector doesn't contribute to the GDP, even though everyone is running towards that field. You can see that even the money that is back into that part of the country, we all know what's happened recently. So I think the focus on small and medium-sized entrepreneurs and micro-small is something that we have to take very seriously. And you've done that very well, sir. As I say, when we come to discuss, there are a few things that I would like to engage. on the same topic. Now, let me go to our next speaker, Mr. Kende Ogudimo. He's an engineer, and that's very interesting. And this time, I think I got it right. He went to the University of Ibadan. But since then, he diversified into business. He went and obtained, when I say business, he obtained a master's in business administration. He's an accountant. He's a member of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, also a chartered financial analyst, CFA, one of those difficult exams. It is not surprising, obviously, that he's in the secondary mortgage market where you're dealing with derivatives and analysis. What Mr. Ogudimo does is to help the banks to be able to give long-term financing at the back end. I'm sure you will enjoy listening to him because I have engaged him a couple of times, and they're trying as much as possible to put it in very simple terms to put roof over people's heads. I think it's a simple way to say no one has a lot of money to go and buy property. Everywhere in the world, you normally access property, real property, through a mortgage. The bank helps you. Nigeria, I think we only have 5% residential mortgages. I'm sure you'll tell us more about that. Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Ogudimo, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me stand on existing protocols. Let me start by thanking the organizers of this event for this opportunity to speak. We're always excited at NMRC when we gather with solution providers. And this is an opportunity to provide solutions, especially for housing. I don't know if I can be permitted just to share a few slides so as to make this easier and pleasing for the eyes. The host has disabled me, so I need to be unable to share the slides.
He will do so shortly.
Okay, thank you. So my topic this afternoon, what I've been assigned to talk about is prerequisites for accessing NMRC mortgage-related loans. Off the bat, let me state that NMRC is a wholesale player, so we don't give loans to individuals. We give loans to financial institutions. So individuals go to financial institutions, they get their mortgages, financial institutions aggregate those mortgages, package them into portfolios, and then come to us for funding. So that's what we are doing. So we're not excellent. Let me share my screen. 1 second. Okay, we got it. So again, as I said, the topic I've been assigned is just to talk about prerequisites for accessing NMRC mortgage-related loans. I think before I go into that, let me thank the Honorable Commissioner for and Attorney General. We've been on this for some time. We signed an MOU with EDO State, I think in November last year, which is a demonstration of the commitment of the people and government of Edo State to make it an investor-friendly environment, a mortgage-friendly state. Hopefully, we'll be able to sign the model mortgage and foreclosure law easily. I thought it would be, because we have so many people on this webinar, that it might be interesting, at least very insightful, to talk about ourselves first, so that people get to know what NMRC is or who NMRC is. Then I'll talk about the challenges in the build sector, and then I'll talk about the model mortgage and foreclosure law, and finally how to access NMRC related loans, of promoting home ownership in Nigeria by deepening both the primary and the secondary mortgage markets. NMRC is an implementation of one of the components of the Nigerian Housing Finance Program, an initiative of the Central Bank, the World Bank, the Ministry of Finance, and the Federal Ministry of Housing. So there was an initiative that looked into how do we make Nigeria more mortgage-friendly or investor-friendly, so that people can come in with capital, or investors can come with their capital to help us move this industry forward. That initiative had 4 components, so NMRC is just one. The other components of that initiative is Nigeria Mortgage Guarantee Company, which we are also working on now to bring into fruition. So NMRC has committed to being the host, an anchor institution for that entity to come into play. That entity will allow individuals who cannot meet the minimum equity payment needed to get mortgages, and also provide default loss protection to the bank. So it has a dual role. It will help people to get into the housing market, to also give some kind of default protection to banks. We're working on that as I speak. So NMRC deepens the primary and secondary mortgage market by on lending long-term funds from the capital market to the mortgage lenders to provide affordable housing to Nigerians. As an entity, we are regulated by the Central Bank of Nigeria under the Regulatory and Supervisory Framework for the operations of mortgage finance companies. Currently, we have 24 shareholders that are banks. 5 of them are commercial banks, 19 of them are mortgage banks. And then in addition to those 24, we have the Sovereign Wealth Fund as the shareholder and the Ministry of Finance as a shareholder. What we do is essentially we go to the capital market to raise funds and on lend to the financial market. So NMRC sits as the bridge between the capital market, where you have long-term funds, and the financial market, where assets are traded with short-term money. As an organization, we believe in the principle of responsible financing, because we believe it is only when we have responsible financing that we can really have something that works for everybody, both the little and the big guys in the industry, in the market. How do we ensure this responsible financing? As an institution, NMRC, when we raise money from the debt capital market, we charge the lowest amount of spread. So when we're on lending, we're fortunate to have the guarantee of the government, so we're able to raise money at competitive rates. But we make sure that, because we want to be responsible, because the ultimate goal for us is to have people get homes, we don't add a lot of percentage. It's a fraction of a percentage that we add on to whatever we get as our cost and pass on to the banks for them to give out to individuals. We also encourage our mortgage banks on their part to be responsible by also charging the minimum amount as spread on the monies that they get from us. We believe that they should be fair and transparent, so there's truth in lending, so that when somebody's going into a mortgage, there are no hidden charges, there are no hidden costs. You won't get into a mortgage this year, next year, the interest rate doubles and things like that. So we give out fixed rate mortgages for extended period. We also promote responsible borrowing by the mortgagors. We encourage mortgage education. Anyone that is going like a potential homeowner, we want him to know what the cash outflow will be for the duration of the mortgage. Can he accommodate such and things like that? We also want them to know that the mortgage, in addition to being a shelter, is also an asset. So how do I enhance the value of my asset? You know, how do I maintain the house? How do I maintain the neighborhood? How do I do things? Because it's possible to buy a house in a neighborhood here for 200,000, and then in 10 years' time, that house has only appreciated by maybe 10,000. You buy in another neighborhood and it's same price, but because there's maintenance, the neighborhood is safer and things like that, they have good educational institutions, you enhance the value of the asset. So these are things that people should know before they get in. So we ensure that that is done. So that's just responsible financing. But that said, the industry itself is, the build sector has a lot of challenges, which I've just highlighted in these, on this slide. So starting from land registration and titling, the cost is enormous, and the time it consumes is mind-blowing. And we know time is money in finance. So every time that you can save in finance, you are saving money. We also have protracted foreclosure process. It takes years sometimes to resolve these issues. Then we have regulatory hurdles that we have to cross as an institution with our regulator, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Ministry of Finance, the Debt Management Office, and a load of regulators that you have to cross, jump hoops to get through to them. We also have the high interest rate. I'm happy to report that we're beginning to see some moderation in interest rates, so rates are coming down. Our hope and wish and prayer is that it will continue to go down, and that it will be not just an aberration to become something that is permanent. We have challenges with infrastructure, and we also have housing construction costs, because most of the materials that we use are imported. So looking at this, you see that the factors that I've listed on the right side of the slide, the protected foreclosure process and the regulatory hurdles, affect mostly the demand side, that is those who want to buy the houses, while the factors on the left, the housing construction and infrastructure, affect the supply side. So we need to solve for both. We need to solve the demand side and the supply side. At the top, you have the land registration and titling affects both, and then high interest rate affects both. Because of these challenges, let me share some grim statistics with us. So if you look at this, the housing shortfall in Nigeria now, although I will say that this data is dated, but it's still relevant as of today. So we have millions of people without decent accommodation in Nigeria. This puts it at about 17 million. Some say it's higher than that now, but we know it's large. When you look at that and you look at India, which has 26 million, you think that India has more problem, but it doesn't, because it has a bigger population, 1.2 billion. So by the time we look at the deficit per capita, I think we have the highest in the world. It's just people living in 30 people in a room or sharing a bathroom. We're saying people living at least in a decent accommodation. And I dare say that there's a correlation between mortgage finance and home ownership. And we just put that slide, the slide on this, the graph on the right shows that in a place like US, where you have about 73% mortgage penetration, you have about 70% home ownership. Same in South Africa, China, and India. The mortgage penetration in India and China looks low because they pay faster. So, they don't, unlike in the West where people wait, 10 years, 15 years, the Chinese and the Indians always, they take mortgages, but they make sure that they get out of it faster. So that's why you see that their mortgage penetration is a little low, but in reality, it's also very high. Nigeria is a measly less than 0.1, it's less than 1% in Nigeria. And that's why you see the kind of construction we have. People want to save and build, and it takes forever and a lot of things to do that. So that shows you we have a lot of problems to solve in Nigeria. The next slide is just showing what we call the debt capital. So I wanted to give an illustration. So if you look at this slide, the arrow that runs laterally, people cannot leverage their assets, which will economically empower them and take them out of poverty. As cities are built haphazardly, are we prepared even for the next the next revolution that will happen in industry? As an organization, NMRC is tackling some of these, and we felt that one of the ways, at least, to solve this problem of unleashing the debt capital is through the model mortgage and foreclosure law, which I'll just go through briefly. So the model mortgage and foreclosure law is aimed at exposing the Nigerian housing market to global opportunities by bringing applicable mortgage and foreclosure laws across the states in line with global standards. The law introduces market-leading and practical innovations to tackle the age-long problem of transferring interest in land and unlocks the ability of states to generate revenue from land transaction. So this not only economically empowers the people, the state will also make money from this because land becomes very transactive. Most people in Nigeria, they buy a house and they stay in it forever. It goes from them to their children. In developed worlds, land houses are sold just like any other asset because there is title. And so at NMRC, we are working on a system called the Electronic Mortgage Asset Register System, which will be able, when we are done, we'll be able to make the transfer of titles and just transaction in housing much easier for Nigerians. So it's, a house should be, I should be able to say, okay, I'm living in Abuja now. When I retire, I want to sell the house I have in Abuja and use the money to buy another house in my village, and it will be seamless. But if we don't have this model mortgage and foreclosure law, which tackles two issues, it tackles the registration and titling problem, and also tackles the foreclosure problem. Key highlights of the law: the objective is to ensure a sound judicial framework for the enforcement of mortgages. Another objective is to ease mortgage transactions through innovative, simple, and clear rules. I'm happy to hear that my lordship is also an arbitrator. We also want to create a non-judicial foreclosure regime. The law seeks to establish strong framework for secondary mortgage market in Nigeria, and to expand, as I said, the flow of capitals to states and revenues to the government by increasing the database of registered property owners, as well as underlying commercial transactions funded by investments in real estate. Key provisions of the law is the establishment of a mortgage registry, the empowerment of mortgagees, that is banks, to register mortgages, shortening the period of perfection. As I said, time is money in finance, and so as much time as we can reduce in any transaction we do, it's significant savings to the mortgagors. It introduces the concept of deemed registration. So when you file something for government consent and you are waiting forever, if you have filed the right thing, we are saying that after a certain period, if we don't hear back from them, you should be deemed to have been registered, and then you move forward with your transaction. This law seeks to eliminate the concept of the double consent requirement. It seeks to cap the perfection cost. So cost will be capped, but the volume of transactions will be increased. So because of the velocity and the increase in transaction, the state actually will not lose anything. Because when people look at it, so we are capping the cost of perfection, yes, but then there will be more trades, there will be more assets that will be brought, into the government for registration and for transactions and all that. So it will be more revenue to the government. So it also seeks to introduce alternative dispute resolution for mortgages and introduce the concept of strata title. I remember I heard my Leonard Silk talking about people having 2 rooms and 3 rooms. This is when you have floors and different floors on the same property. How do you get that asset, so that I can sell my floor and then the other person who is living above me, they can still have this floor, and then there can be transaction. It also introduces non-judicial foreclosure. So what are the prerequisites for getting NMRC loans? As I said, we deal with corporate entities or financial institutions. But if you go to those banks, they will ask for these basic things. We have what we call the uniform underwriting standard. So we have for different categories of people. We have for the formal sector, that is those who have jobs, regular income. We have for the informal sector, which will capture what the chairman of LAPO was talking about, and then I'm happy to report that we've been having discussions even on how we can extend our refinancing to that sector, because that sector is a massive sector and we can't make an impact in Nigeria until we embrace that sector. We had discussion, I think, earlier this year before COVID or during COVID, and then we'll advance that discussion forward with LAPO. So the condition is simple. The person must be a natural person. The person must have attained the age of 21 years to be able to get a mortgage. You must have a verifiable and steady source of income. This will vary from individual to individual. So is the person formal or informal? We have ways of making a decision for those categories of people. We also have for the Islamic or non-finance kind of transactions, and then for diaspora. The applicant's income should be able to accommodate the monthly payment, which ties back to responsible financing that I talked about earlier. The person should have a demonstrable credit history, good credit history, and the applicant should have some skin in the game by having a contribution of about 20% equity down payment. We know that this is a challenge, the 20% equity down payment, and that's why I talked about earlier on that we're trying to establish a Nigerian guarantee company, which will come to help people who cannot meet the 20% equity down payment. The 7th item here, which is the property to be refinanced, should be at least 125% collateral cover. That's just reinforcing what is in 6. If you meet the condition in 6 where you have 20% equity down payment, then the collateral covers are already 125%. And then the property must have a valid title, free from encumbrance, and must be insured. Finally, let me end by saying capital flows to where it is welcome, and it stays where it is well treated. So for investors to come to Edo State, we must welcome them, and we must guarantee them that they will be well treated. And the only way we can do this is to ensure that we adopt the model mortgage and foreclosure law for Edo State. It will give confidence to the investors. It will economically empower the people of Edo State and unleash the potential of that dynamic state for economic advancement. The judiciary should not see responsible investors as Shylocks, but as friends. They're coming there with money to help the people to advance the society and for the good of all. And by doing so, we'll be economically empowering everybody in Edo State. I'll stop here for now, and then I'm sure we'll take questions after. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Gundimi, for that succinct description of the secondary market, which sometimes could appear complex, but as you did a fantastic job in simplifying what you do, and without you, it will be very difficult for any financial institution to provide long-term loans, which is really what mortgages are. The complexity of a mortgage is the fact that you are giving property to the bank. In the event that there's a default, the bank or the primary mortgage institution can recover that property. Now, there are a few things that you talked about that I'm trusting will form the subject of our discussion when we call you. On a lighter note, when you talked about the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, which is critical for any long-term transaction, and I hear some politicians making a fun of it that the present government is signing MOUs, and I'm saying, how else could you proceed without an MOU? It just shows the ignorance the number of people who are on the podium seeking power. But it's an MOU you do need, and I'm happy that you said one had been signed. The National Collateral Registry, which deals with all assets, I am elated to talk about it because it took us 10 years. I was very much involved with the central bank to get that in. It took us 10 years. Ghana, Kenya, a few other countries, and it just tells you how long it takes. Sometimes maybe because of political and bureaucratic challenges to effect things. The sale and purchase of financial assets, which you do, is something that we've been proposing. We have a framework for the sale and purchase of non-performing assets, your AMCON Act, but you don't have one for the sale and purchase of performing assets, which is very interesting. But I'm sure, again, we'll talk about that during the course of it. Some of the issues you propose, and I trust the Attorney General was listening, democratization of consent, making it more effective. I know the Edo State governor has gone into electronic CFO, which has improved it, but I think that he still has the sole custody. What the World Bank has said is that for us to be effective, you should be able to appoint 1, 2, 3 commissioners to issue consent so that it's quick. And I just wanted the Attorney General to bear that in mind. And if the governor was here, something I was going to say to him that commendable. I know he's done some things. He's reduced some taxes. And perhaps what I would say is in reducing those taxes, you were right. When the cost of consent was reduced in Lagos State, there was an expansion in the number of transactions that went through. There is statistic to back up that the government will make far more money if it continues to reduce it and encourage transactions to go on. But let me not try and overrun what you said, because I will come back to you during the course of the conversation, and I think we would. It's usually more productive. I now want to introduce the last speaker, and it gives me great pleasure and admiration to introduce this speaker, and you will see why in a short moment. He obtained his degree in University of Benin. He's done most of his education in Benin, but he's taken his business beyond Benin, of course. He's an educationist, interestingly, in history, again from the University of Benin. Two things that stand out in his career. He know that because he's my younger brother. We were all in the business at some point, and he continues to win my respect and admiration. But what he's done recently that I think stands out is the fact that he's partnering with the economic development team in Dubai, headed by Walid Abdul Malik. The Emiratis work for perfection, and I know that my brother Adusa Obama is working towards perfection as he takes over the Central Hotel in Benin, and I think very soon they'll be opening it. So he's into hoteling, he's into selling of small nitbits in the catering business, and then he's into training of youths. He's also training some of the returnees. So he's doing quite a lot in Edo. Interestingly, he started in Lagos. Turnover was huge in Lagos, but the margins of profit was very thin. It's gone back to Benin. Turnover not so huge, but marginal profit is very impressive. So I'm very happy that I can turn to my younger brother to assist me sometimes when I have an economic challenge. Thank you very much, Mr. Idosa. Please go ahead.
We just lost him.
Oh, we lost him. Wow.
I can't see him online.
Okay, I'm sure he will join us. I can tell you a few things about his business because that's part of a family business. Whilst we wait for him, I'll tell you that after I've been called to the bar in the United Kingdom, I came back home. My mom had always been a caterer. I came back home, and my mom is a good cook, but corporate governance has always been a challenge. So I came back home and said to her, you know, I can run this business. She said, no, you can't. What do you know about it? I said, let me try, but on two conditions. One, you will step back as chairman, give me full. And then two, you need to talk to my dad, because as far as he was concerned, we were selling rice. Having sent us to the United Kingdom, and then I've been called to the bar in England. He didn't see how I will come back and start selling rice. But it was a bit more than selling rice. I got involved in the business in Benin, and we took the business to Lagos. We went into the airline catering, and we started with 4 staff. By the time I was leaving 4 years, we had over 80. Now, we had a number of challenges. When we started, it was very difficult to access credits. My dad had helped a bit. We were supplying Okada Airline, who was the pioneer, you know, domestic airliner at that time. And he was gracious enough to give us a box room, I would say, a mechanic's room at the airport site. That helped because we were looking for a site in Lagos, but we just couldn't afford it. And my dad was not very, very excited. So his credit was limited. He was the only one we could go to. But, you know, here came Chief Igbinedion, who gave us a site. Now, what were the challenges we experienced during the course of it? And I said to myself, talk about the challenges shortly, that if ever I get back to law, I'm going to get involved in the framework. And that's how we got involved in the in PEBEC. We got involved in many of the things I do, which is helping the regulatory framework for business. One of the first challenges we experienced was that the industry we were supplying itself was regulated, but no one was following the regulations. So all the small businesses would suffer every time there was a turbulent line industry. And the bankruptcy law and insolvency law were very weak. So you have situations where small businesses like us were required to wait 30 days before you paid us. In other situations, they would not pay. And if they don't pay, there's no way you can go to it, even though you supplied it and you were just a small business. We were fortunate. We had access to a few friends that would help us. Once a while, I would go and read with my dad. But, you know, we had capacity to take the catering to a different level. I was already discussing with British Airways, Lufthansa. Now, why do I say that? Because the food that you were supplied at that time was stale. At that time, the British Airways did what we call back-to-back. They bring in food and store it at Sheraton and then take it back on your back leg. If you notice at that time when you had rice or beans, usually it will not taste, or indeed they'll just give you an English meal that was easy to preserve. Now, we saw a gap and we saw an opportunity. All right, I think Mr. Idusa is back on now, so let him take over and tell us his challenges. Mr. Idusa, are you there? Hello? Okay, I think I will keep on speaking until he comes back. So we had those challenges. We also had the regulators constantly barraging us with all manner of requests. Now, as a lawyer and having a background, I tried to ensure that I complied with all. And I'm telling you, there were many. It was either, we ran a restaurant as well at the heart of Lagos. It was a television license. It was local government gutter cleaning. They served you with all manner of requests. It was really challenging. And even though I met 97%, I then realized that there was an attempt to ensure that I negotiated with the local authority. The more I met the request, the more demands came. Oh, I think Mr. Idosa is here. Mr. Idosa, I was just talking about the challenges.
The system just crashed. And
all right.
Yeah, in fact, the whole system crashed. We don't know what happened.
Okay, I was just laying the foundation for you to
I heard you in the last few minutes.
Please go ahead.
I'm so sorry. Anyway, I heard about the airlines and all that happened, that we had to access, we had to use our social contacts, using our father to actually raise finance in the airline sector. But we've moved on, and we've now taken our experience from what we've had personally to other people, and see how we can also assist people from some of the challenges that they have in assessing finance with regards to debt capital. I've done some paperwork, but I'll just found, I don't know how many more minutes I have. So do I still have 10 minutes or less?
Yes, you have 10 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. When you look at the definition of debt capital, I'm going to be talking vis-a-vis the context of access to capital, for business success. And I'll be talking about the low and no income, talking about the low and no income people. We're talking about mortgages, we're talking about housing and all that. I think there's still a lot of regulatory work and a lot of work that has to be done. But every day, every year, every month, skilled people are getting skilled in different skill sets. You have carpenters, you have caterers, you have, and for me, I think I want to focus on this category of people, just like what LAPO does, and some of them are unbankable. And to this end, I'm sure you are aware that Nigeria holds as much as $900 billion in debt capital in residential real estate and agricultural land alone. As you know, we as we continue to strive towards meeting globalization and being among the Committee of Nations, we find out that the low and no income, they have constantly had challenges in accessing finance. And one of the things that for us, we have also, from our personal experience, I'll start with us first. At the time, getting tax clearance was a big issue. Getting registered company was a big issue. Information was challenging. Now we're talking about collateral registry. Now, yes, that is happening. A lot of people don't even know much about it. Thank God for LAPO, because most of has already talked about a lot of sensitization. Then we have the issue of people not being trained properly. This is the critical part where we come in as a MENA Academy. People not being trained. You find people sometimes they don't know what to do, how to do it, and where to even start. These are issues that for us are germane, because I think we are looking at the basic, from point zero. Can you hear me, please?
Questions.
Hello. Hello.
I can hear you.
Okay. I just wanted to be sure. Sold everything. He has no assets. Professor Inka Omorogbe will tell you that sometimes some of them have to sleep in her office, they have to provide shelter. So we are looking at this set of people, and we've been working with those kind of people for the past couple of years since the university came on board. So if we are looking at access to capital to this set of people, for us, I think there is need for some regulatory mechanism, some mechanisms that can support, these startups. And we're talking about startups at the very, 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 basic point zero. So first of all, some of them don't even have addresses. So there's a question of no contact address. They have no bank accounts. They have nothing. So these are the challenges. But I don't want to go to the organized sector. The organized sector is okay, it's fairly accessible. You have data, you have some information about the organized sector. So, but this category of people constitute, in fact, with last count, one of the UN agencies, the returnees that came into the States, as of January this year, over 10,000. So you can imagine trying to support 10,000 people, and some of them, if I quite a number of them, they want to do their own business. They want to be bakers. They want to have a little bakery shop and all that. So, moving forward, for us at the MENA Academy, the steps we are first of all profile them. Doing needs assessments, you profile them, in profiling them, giving them, those state tax force is giving them SIM cards, giving them some, expose them to livelihood, various livelihood opportunities. And at the end of the day, we now look at how they can be trained, properly trained. And thank God for some of the development agencies that have come on board to support those states in this regard. Then, when we train them, we now have how to access finance. Now, the NISAL, the Nigerian, the central bank has set up something called the AGNIS facility for even the unbankable and people who do not. This is where the collateral registry has come in. And we are processing loans for such people, ensuring that they get loans, startup loans, and even working capital. So I would be, my own point would be seeking more support for these categories of people, just like what Lapo is doing. You're looking at Lapo talking about the social collateral, more or less, and combining it with collateral registry. I think it's the way forward, and let the law be strengthened around this side, because when we are doing financing sometimes with these groups, we turn them into cooperatives, and based on that, there's some sort of co-guarantee. And because the co-guarantee, then they are profiled with their BVN with the NISA Microfinance Bank, and before you know it, but the process is still cumbersome. It's although it's straightforward, but it's not. I think it has to be strengthened. It's quite slow, very slow. That's one of the challenges of doing business here. Everything is calculated based on inflation and the dollar. By the time you seek for funding, whether it's 100,000 naira funding for business or 20 million naira funding for business, by the time you apply and by the time the funding comes, you find out that there's a gap. You cannot even purchase what you want to do. And for another set of people, with the agribusiness, with the core area where we also are, are actually playing at this moment, is that security is a huge challenge. Talking about some of the challenges, I know they will say, "Oh, we're talking about access to capital," but capital without security to ensure that the business goes well, we can't achieve anything. So it's for us, we will be recommending some holistic approach, strengthening the basic, strengthening what I would call those on ground zero. Strengthening there should be regulation and processes to strengthen, especially the cooperative model, just like what Lapo is doing. They are masters in that, and look at how we can combine the cooperative model and the collateral registry together to ensure that some of these challenges are there. The presidential initiative of the ease of doing business has done quite a lot. There's still more to be done. I know in the last gathering where the engineer mentioned, and our tax grants that they're kind of faster now. So I think other panelists have spoken, critically on the issue of assets, about formal sector, about processes, mortgages, and all that. But we would rather concentrate on the lowest of the lowest, and this is the space where I've been playing. So at this point, I want to thank everybody. Sorry for the structure. Everything went so smooth up on the point where you were about calling me. It ruffled me a bit, but I thank everyone. The Chief Judge, it's a privilege, an honor to be with you on the same panel. Then General, Mr. Egiamuso, I thank you so much, and the learned senior advocates. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Dosa. your focus is collaborative. It's not necessarily exclusive. In other words, most of those who are sweating on the streets, they actually live somewhere. Where they live is something that in India, what they've done is basically try to find, even if it's one room, that one room is so titled that he could mortgage that one room. And if he cannot keep it, if he cannot maintain it, somebody else will be ready to go in. So I'll come back. Don't worry, I'll come back to your questions. I'm just trying to contextualize your speech. The session we're going into now are questions, and usually questions and answers. We have one or two from the audience. We have a few here, and the way I'm going to run this is I would ask questions in relation to the order in which each presenter has spoken. So I'm going to deal first with the small claims, and then I would deal with microcredits, and then I would deal with mortgages. And Edosa, you dealt more with the macro issues, which are huge. There's no doubt about it. The question of inflation, interest rates. It's very interesting. The central bank is trying to control interest rates now. This has a correlation with your treasury bills, and they are not crowding out the private sector like before, but those are more macro issues, which unfortunately the state cannot deal with. We'll work within what the state can handle. But I'm sure Mr. Ogundemi will deal with that at the appropriate time. So let me go back to the small claims, because there's obviously a correlation between how you resolve disputes relating to defaults and credits and the position that the society or the state attains in economic well-being. Because if people are sure that they can reclaim their credit, there'll be more incentives, they'll be more encouraged to give out credit, and this will introduce a multiplier effect. My Lord, we're again grateful, and credit must be given, taking that initiative, and obviously your background encourages that. But having regard to what Mr. Idosa said, micro and super microfinance is for the lowest of the lowest. And I think this question will also be directed to the Attorney General. Is there an attempt to translate the rules in the small claims courts into Pidgin or Edo or languages people understand? When I was in Benin recently, the COVID messages were translated in different language. I was very impressed. Is there something that my Lord and the Attorney General are considering so that you can really access those who really will be using this? Because we are talking about people who've taken a credit of 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, and who are not literates. My Lord, the question is directed first at you, and I think the Attorney General might have one or two things to say. You're muted, my Lord. You're muted.
It's muted.
Sorry, I didn't realize. What I'm trying to say is that the handbook and the practice direction that during the sensitization period, because the other language we have here is the Pidgin English. And while we're doing sensitization, we had jingles. We had jingles of the media in Edo, the three principal local languages, that's Benin, Isha, and Esako. And we kept relaying them on the radio, social medias, prints, and all that, educating the people that this type of court is going to be established. And we listed the key points for people to be able to understand the aim of the small claims court and what they are established to do. And then during the sensitization program also, when we're going around the 3 senatorial districts, we spoke in Pidgin English to be able to capture the attention and understanding of the local people. And then when we were in Edo Central and Edo North, like in Edo Central, we had Enoje, who was present to translate to the people who attended. Apart from Pidgin English, we had one translating in Pidgin, and the other one in the local Asian language. Eastern language. And then the same thing happened in Esako, and yes, that's the Edo North. We had the translators in Pidgin and also Esako, so that local people who attended could understand again what our mission was with regards to the small claims court. Because we had a lot of local people there, the hairdressers, the tailors, the vulcanizers, the butchers, the local, okay, says my internet connect. Are you hearing me? Are you hearing me? Hello?
Very clearly, my lord. I can hear you clearly.
Hearing me?
Yes, yes, very much.
Okay. So we're able to reach a lot of indigents in their different locations. So that is how far we have done. It's just, and in the court system, if we have anybody who doesn't speak English, we have translators, we have registrars who can speak the local languages, so that when they come, if they don't understand, even if they've heard about the court and they do not know how to file their claims, we have people who are versed in the local languages in the courts. They are there among the registrars. They put them through. They explain to them in the local languages and put them through. And when the trials and proceedings are going on, we also have translators who will also translate from English, because the language of the court is English, to the local dialect, so that people can understand and get them engaged in their claims and how to how to take part in the trials that we conduct in the small claims court. That is how far we have gone right now.
Thank you very much, my lord, and I'm sure that we'll be looking forward to the rules being translated in due course. The other question.
We'll try to do that. Before I had an issue on my mind. I don't know, but it's going to be for, I think, Mr. Gyamuso and Mr. Gudimu, but I don't know if I should ask now or hold on when it gets to that time.
No, please let it be as interactive as possible. We only have one other question for my lord. So my lord, go ahead and ask the question.
Oh, okay. It has to do with the low or no income group of people that I think are in majority in the society right now. Let's focus on Edo State. These people, maybe they have skills, they need to access loans or credits. And you mentioned something like somebody who has, maybe in India, maybe you have one room and you can access that credit without one room. There are people in situations here in Benin who don't even have a room to boast about. They sleep in motor parks, but it is the situation they have for themselves, not because they want it that way. Some, maybe this issue of first son inheriting the Gyogbe and sending out his relations and things like that, you know. And when they do that, we have centers for who take on this type of people, train them, and then we start them off with maybe one or two machines or a barbing tool or something. They team up. They team up. Maybe someone rents a shop for them. Now they have no income yet, and then when they start, and they have to assess, they want to assess the any credit. There's this palpable fear that I've observed because I've attended induction of some of this type of persons. There's this palpable fear that, oh, this is a little thing they have, maybe just a tool. If they want to access credit and they pledge it, get the credit, and they are not able to meet up with payment, what happens? Their fear is that accessing credit and not being able to pay back as they are required to, the credit more or less now impoverishes them rather than really lifting them out of poverty.
Hello.
Do you understand? Takes them back to square one where they are coming from. So I want to suggest that if such people do come, some of them are really honest and they have a lot of enthusiasm, with what they want to do. If they can be encouraged, sensitized, and supervised, maybe they have people who visit them. How is your business going? This is what you need to do. And then give them very low interest rates. So to be able to take them out of these money lenders who are more like vultures, they want to eat into everything they have and they end up not having anything. So if they get more education, more supervision, and they are put in a disciplined track that, look, it's not everything you make that you spend or you just squander or do something. You have a responsibility to pay this thing back at such and such, amount every month, and then in the end, he's better off for it. So that is the way I'm thinking, because I see a lot of these people, a lot of them coming around your way, looking for what help or
Yes.
other.
Yes, my lord. I will let Mr. I have a lot to say about that, but I'm only a moderator because I was involved in the National Collateral Registry, which actually takes as collateral intellectual property. But I will let Mr. Egiamuso answer that question.
Yeah, thank you so much. My lord, I think that was quite incisive, and actually I was having the feeling that you were a part of a LAPO. So I will explain this. It is true that if credit is not properly administered, it can actually take the poor deeper in poverty. So there's no doubt about that. What we do, what we do appears to be the prescriptions by my Lord. One is this: we do not require collateral, for LAPO. Ours is based on our philosophical understanding of what microcredit is. That you cannot ask people who don't know really have anything to bring those things. Okay? So the next thing we do is that we realize the nature of these people that my Lord has just described. In most cases, they do not have sufficient education and skills to manage their micro businesses. And therefore, we came up with what we call preload training. Preload training, we expose the potential, but understanding our processes, what LAPO is and what LAPO is not. You should understand that. The second segment of that preload training is how do you manage your micro businesses? They are not going to be so sophisticated business school training, no. The fact that you close your hand like this and you pour water in it and say, look, money is like we have given to you for a business, is to hold it like this, it's like water or it drifts away. So we try to, train them so well on that. And then the third thing is that we put them in most cases, though we have few that are operating on their own. Those highly vulnerable at the bottom, we organize them into small groups. And within that group, that is where they are trained. So they have peer support. They're able to understand that other people are doing well. They also want to do that. And we come up eventually with a very clear repayment structure. And the repayment structure is based on the fact that we acknowledge the fact that you can't walk into this commercial banks and take loan. We have therefore taken the responsibility of taking the money to you. And therefore, you have two obligations, and we train them on that. The first obligation is that you must use the money well. Because you must use the money well. You are trained how to use the money well. The second obligation is that you have the clear obligation for complete repayment of the loan. So in a way, that has been our process, and it has helped us not only to grow our loan asset, but also to ensure that we have been in lending for more than 30 years. So this is the way we go about it, my Lord.
I was just going to follow up a question.
Yeah.
Whilst we're doing a research on LAPO, I will come back to Gundemo mortgages and Mr. Idosa. While we're doing a research, there was a joke that nobody ever defaults on LAPO, and that's because LAPO in Ibadan has developed all manner of means to get back your money, including calling people and telling their neighbors they're debtors. Is that correct, sir?
That's interesting. Okay. Let me quickly just respond to that, Ozaro. Are you still hearing me? Ozaro, can I quickly respond to that? Okay,
please, quickly.
It's not only Ibadan alone. In Benin, we are called Giegba. That is, they say when our clients go to, our officers go, no, we go out. We don't. They don't come to us. We actually go out to them. So when our borrower, our loan officer gets to them, and you say, okay, Mama, the Egba, let it be complete, and all that. The additional thing we have across the country is that anybody that takes a little loan from any institution, it is LAPO loan. So that is the way they say it's LAPO loan. So any treatment by other institutions is by LAPO. I take LAPO loan. But coming to the fact of this is this. When we started early, we had this challenge. It is interesting to know that we were more than 26 NGO across the country in 1996. And the whole challenge is that people take loan and they feel that they don't have the obligation to repay. Not only at the top, it's also at the bottom, and all that. So we got to a point and I said, look, all others have collapsed. I can say that. We're the only one that's been able to scale up. So we got to a point and did two things. The first one we did is that we take the mirror of blame. The mirror of blame, and take the mirror of blame and look into it and said, here we have some issue as an institution. So we try to identify what we have problem. That's why it was not going. We address those problems. And then we turn it to our clients and said, we will support you. We will provide the money you want at the quantum and the time that you need the money. And we will do everything to support you. We will meet with you on a weekly basis. But you have to take on the responsibility for complete repayment of that loan. So we have various loans. We ensure that we support them. We support their children. We offer scholarship to their children. We provide them with health issues. During this COVID-19, we bought bags of rice. We bagged them to 5 kg and distribute across the country. They know that, but we feel that they should take on that responsibility for repayment of their loan.
Thank you very much, sir. Let me, because we have my time, I want to, Attorney General, I would keep you for the last because you'll be making some commitments that will hold you accountable to. So let me go to Mr. Budimo before I go back to Mr. Yes.
Sorry, before you do, I would like Mr. Ogundimu to please talk about the fact that we have actually drafted a mortgage law in Benin. Or I'd like to emphasize that in fact. And I think we're the second state or third state. And so we are waiting, because I think that hasn't come out at all yet. We're actually waiting for legislative assent. He referred to it obliquely, but I think it hit that fact. We have gone through an intensive process.
You words out of my mouth. I'm just going to direct the next question to Mr. Ogundimu on two things.
Yeah.
One is what difference with the mortgage loan, and I want you to deal with two things that are innovative with this model law that you're bringing in. What will it make? And secondly, in the states in which they have actually implemented, Lagos being one of them, has there been a significant impact in the availability of primary mortgages? So I'd like you to deal with those two issues, please.
Okay, thank you, Leonard Silk. The Honorable Commissioner Attorney General, yes, I said it, but maybe I wasn't emphatic enough. Edo State is actually one of the leading states when it comes to this model mortgage and foreclosure. As I stated earlier, they have signed the MOU with us. The law has been drafted. It's just the legislators to meet so that they can pass the bill and then it goes to the governor for assent. We're waiting on that, and we're hopeful that that will be done as soon as possible. But while we were waiting for you, Madam, Ogun State moved ahead, passed the law, signed it, and everything. Ekiti State has done the same thing. And the Nasarawa State has done is in the process. I was the governor last about a week ago, or no, 2 weeks ago. So states are beginning to latch onto this to see the importance of this, which it's a segue to the question that the learned seekers asked. Kaduna State, for instance, has seen the benefits. One of the benefits is the fact that we have signed a tripartite blended interest rate agreement with them. So we're saying that, okay, because you have a law, we know that we can realize assets on time. We're bringing X amount of money. And Kaduna State government said, that's fine, we will match it with this X amount of money. And because of that blended rate, they're going to be getting their mortgages at about 8% or 7%, which is much lower than what obtains in the industry. Kaduna State has also moved ahead when it comes to, if you look at in IGR, Internet Generated Revenue, in Northern Nigeria, Kaduna is #1. The Bank of, I think is the Bank of Agriculture, because they've seen the business-friendly nature of Kaduna State, they are moving their headquarters from Kano. I think they have done it now to Kaduna. So you can see, because everybody knows that, so in addition to signing the model, having the model mortgage and foreclosure law, they also have a law on rents, so that you don't just rent a house and you say you're not going to. So it's a friendly state. And I know Edo will get that too, but it's on the way. The benefits are enormous. We go out, we think that places really wants to do business, and they're asking us for states where to do business. We will look only to those states that we know that they have those laws in place, and so we'll be mouthpiece of such. So in addition to what we do, the World Bank has a rating that comes out every 2 years, which investors world over look at. One of the things they look at, I have on my desk, is which are the business-friendly states or the mortgage-friendly states, so that foreign investors are more comfortable to come into such places. So the key thing that this law introduces is just elimination of the bureaucracy in the process. As I said, one of the key things is we want shorter term to market. Shorter term for people to be able to get their documents perfected and at a cheaper amount. And then if there happens, unfortunately, which is what we don't want, for people to have their houses foreclosed, there's also a clear path and a process for doing that. I won't go into more details, but it's just to make sure everything is simple. There's certainty of time, there's certainty of cost, because those are the things that you want to have at the back of your mind before you go into any transaction. And this law just does that. Simplify the process, make it fair to everyone, even to the borrowers and then to the investors. So, it's a fair process. It's not, nobody's being hamstrung, and that's why I like what the chairman of LAP was talking about. Mortgage education is one of the key things that we emphasize as an organization. People need to know what they're getting into. Property is one of for most of us, the largest investment that you will get into. But if you get into it right, it's a fantastic asset, especially if you have all these things in place where you can monetize it, you can have equity, get loans against the equity to do other businesses and have the supply effect and still return the property. So this is a game changer for every state. I'm glad that it's being drafted. Hopefully the legislative process will go smoothly and then we can have something. And then we will be the one shouting, go to Edo with your money. They're ready. Because we were there with the World Bank. The last time I was there, the World Bank came also to talk about the small schemes, the small claims court at that time. And I'm happy to hear that one has moved ahead. And I hope this one will move as quickly as that be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Mr. Goodim. Mr. Goodim, you don't deal with individuals, you deal with corporate bodies, right?
Yes, ma'am. We deal with commercial, we deal with financial institutions, but they now package those and bring to us. Yes.
And if I heard you right, your interest rate there is 8%.
No, for the states in Kaduna, because they have the law, we're able to do blended rate with them. Otherwise, it would have been double digits.
Okay.
You know. But now, generally, interest rates in Nigeria is coming down. As I'm talking to you now, my lord, the interest rate for 10-year loan is about 9.5%. So we've seen a significant reduction. Something that was about 14, 13 is come down. And this is attributable to so many other things that is happening in the macro economy. You know, where we're seeing some structural changes. You know, the lifting of the adjustment that is happening with the exchange rate is something that we have been fighting for, because sometimes people think that some things are good, but we pay for it in other ways. You know, so Stephen is beginning to adjust the exchange rate. The government is also liberalizing the contracts of water. These were the major revenue of the government that was making the government. So if you're able to break those holes, there's less crowding out in the market and rates will come down. So we're hoping that this will not just be a blip, it will be something of a permanent. But we're seeing even rates come down for everybody now. So I think it's just good that we'll go ahead and go with this law and become number one state.
I still have an issue here because we hear a lot of cases in court, and my experience has shown that when the interest rate, because when individuals access loans from corporate bodies and maybe like commercial banks and things like that, they have this loan agreement they sign, and in most cases, you find out that the commercial banks and all, they have a provision there that the interest rates can be increased without notice to the customer. So I'm wondering if this interest rate that has gone down now is going to stay down, and what redress, because in most cases, when you come to court and you find out that we are saying the interest rates has gone down in relation with the customers who access the loans, and the commercial banks say with or without notice to the customer, the interest rate can be increased, and then we have a problem, because what finally gets to the consumer is so much higher than where it's coming from. So that is an issue that has to be tackled, because if you're going to start assessing these credits, so maybe to for mortgages and all that, what's going to happen?
So, let me answer that question. So, for us, what we give out is what is called fixed rate mortgage. So, the rate on which you get on day one, it will be the loan will be forever. The banks cannot increase our loan. In fact, if rates go down, you can even refinance and get a lower rate. So it's a fixed rate mortgage, there are no hidden charges. And that's why I was quick to emphasize in my, I think, the second slide, that we encourage responsible finance. It must be something that is certain from day one. Customer knows that my rate is this, and we'll fix it.
So, Mr. Bullimu, thank you very much. And I know that the CJ, the Chief Judge of EDO, will have many more questions on this area, as many people do. Literature that you produced, I think, will help a lot. And I know that we have almost come to the end of this. I want to keep the time, so when we call people next time, they'll come. However, before we go on the Attorney General, I'd like to say, before I thank everyone, I'd like each one, apart from the Attorney General and the CJ, to say what is the one thing you'd like to see EDO State do, because I have questions from the public. A lot of the questions relate to literature. People want to take a loan to get a house. Where do I go? Where do I start? We talked of education. What is the one thing that you'll be looking to government to assist to build infrastructure? And I need you to tell me in 30, 15 seconds, so we can hold the Attorney General, I can't hold my Lord responsible for arbitrary contempt. At least we can hold the Attorney General accountable. So I'll start with Mr. Idosa in that order.
Is he hearing you? Is he hearing you?
Yes, but it's actually speaking, but it's muted. Okay, let me go to Mr. Undibude. 5 seconds. One thing that you want to see Edo State government do is
ease of doing business, more education, more education, sensitization, and information on what's going on. And one that the state government is already working on is the partnership with the more independent power plant. Power is a serious issue. So definitely, I think then in the agri sector, we must look at the area of security, community security for the smallholder farmers and smallholder processors. I think
thank you. Power and the Edo State government is already doing that, so that's not much of a problem. We're going
Security.
to be power and security. All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Ogundimu, what is the one thing in 5, 7 seconds you would like to see?
I want Edo State to adopt mortgage and foreclosure law and make it investor friendly. That's it. I know the attorney general is working on this and they just need to push it across the finish line.
Once the roof is returned and the settlement, I'm sure the first thing will pass in the States. Thank you very much. Thank you. What would you like to say?
Quickly, two things. The first one is that so much being done. I think there is need for massive awareness, sensitization of our people. The second is the fact that there is need to support the emergence of primary mortgage institutions. I don't think Kennedy and this wonderful company can do issue for us if we do not have primary mortgage institutions in Edo State.
Thank you very much. And all I will say to that is, Honorable Attorney General, the Department of Communication would have to take this as a project. There is information asymmetry that's big on the area, particularly on the collateral security and primary mortgages. People really don't understand that education. I think it must be taken as a project beyond the law that needs to be passed. Now, I go back to the Attorney General. I will give my Lord the last word. Attorney General, please let me hear your last word on the program, not your last word forever. Attorney General, can you hear me?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Hello. Oh, you can.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to note that you have emphasized, Mr. Ogundimu, something we know theoretically, but know in practice now, which is that time waits for nobody. And so there are states that are catching on to this, catching on to what is a new philosophy, so to speak, for us, a novel philosophy that will help the people come out. And states need to know that we have to pass the law. So we'll be happy if all of you can become, will I say, advocates for the mortgage law, because we definitely need that to be done once it is physically possible. I think you've emphasized the great federal support, which one or two people have, the states. I think that we touched on some of these issues, but I think that yes, sensitization it's an ongoing thing for us, and it has to be ongoing. We can't just say it once, but we have to continue to say it. I have to say as well that for processes and systems and for change, the message has to continually be reiterated. So we're taking that home as a government, and I know that particularly for the Ministry of Justice, we have to do a lot of that, and we are going to have to essentially take it up as something that must be done on a weekly basis. I actually think that this has to be the first of webinars or workshops in
We seem to be losing the Attorney General. Right, I think she was concluding anyway.
Thank you. So I am concluding, and my conclusion is that I think next time you should tell us a bit more about the collateral registry, because we actually never got around to it. So that will be a topic for our next webinar.
No, I will. I was concerned about time. It's something that I extremely excited because I was there from inception, but that will be next time. Lord, the Chief Judge of Edo State, I will give you the very last word before I thank everyone. Thank you, my Lord.
I want to thank you for putting this webinar together. And I'd like to state that the Small Claims Court has come to stay, and it's a good stepping stone to the ease of doing business. It will enhance that. And then we are also trying to ensure that we improve on in that area. And then the mortgage, I want to encourage or appeal to the Attorney General to ensure that the law to establish the Edo State Mortgage Agency, the creation of foreclosure law, is passed so that people can get sensitized about the issue of mortgages, to be able to own their own homes. There's nothing as good as after I had this work, where you're going to rest your head at the end of the day, it's yours, and not have the landlord coming knocking on your door for your rent. And so it's an awareness that should be improved upon, and when the law is finally passed. So I will thank Mr. Obudio in that regard. And for Mr. Giamusa, thank you for what you're doing too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for what you're doing and lifting people out of poverty, especially the low income or no income area, and the sensitization you are doing, the awareness you're creating to enable them key into that facility, rather than going to Shylock, the money lenders whose aim on the long run, for what we see even in court, is actually to protect your whatever collateral you have given them. So, Mr. Thank you for the training you are doing to be able to improve people and create capacity in them to stand for themselves and be able to earn a living and lift themselves out of nothing onto something. You know, there are so many other organizations like that, but coming from you, are taking a leading role here in Benin. So what you did in collaboration with the Honorable Attorney General, with those who were repatriated from Libya also, the returnees. So thank you for that. And thank you, Attorney General, for hosting. Although I'm saying, I know I'm not giving a vote of thanks, but it's been an interesting time for me here, and to have heard from all of you. Mr. Obame, Osaro, thank you.
Thank you, my Lord. I will simply reinforce and stand on all squares with the appreciation that my Lord has given out. I will not take any further time of anyone. I will do more than call for the end, because my Lord has assisted me with what I was going to do next, and I don't think I need to repeat. I say thank you, and I stand on all squares with my Lord. Thank you very much. The national anthem closes. Thank you. God bless everyone.